part of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
You're listening to Petticoats and Poppies.
History Girls at the Movies.
Welcome to Petticoats and Poppies, History Girls at the Movies. We're your hosts, Maggie and
Nicole. Today we're back with our second special movie musical themed episode. Last time we talked about The Greatest Showman, a film that neither of us like, to put it politely. This time we're talking about a movie that we're both very fond of, but I think to different levels.
Yes. So keep your hand at the level of your eye and join us as we discuss the 2004 adaptation of Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Phantom of the Opera. This is also a timely episode as The Phantom of the Opera on Broadway is celebrating its 33rd birthday this week. So happy birthday to Broadway. So about the film that we are talking about today, The Phantom of the Opera premiered in 2004. It was directed by Joel Schumacher, with a screenplay by Joel Schumacher and Andrew Lloyd Webber. The cast was Gerard Butler, Emmy Rossum, Patrick Wilson, Miranda Richardson, and Minnie Driver. The film was filmed entirely at Pinewood Studios, and it also put to use miniatures in a lot of these shots, which as I was watching today, I'm fairly certain is like a weird combination of miniatures when the Opera Populaire blows up with the fire shooting out of it, which is just so perfectly 2004. It did garner a handful of nominations at the Golden Globes and Academy Awards, but it failed to pick up any wins. If you want to watch it, the movie is free on YouTube. The irony of this being that I own 2 copies of this movie, and I still chose to watch it on YouTube instead.
Okay, I also own the DVD, and I watched it on YouTube, so...
I literally, got it out last night, and then I was like, nah, YouTube.
I will always be fond of this movie because it was my introduction to the musical, and, high school me loved this movie. I used to, not only watch this movie a lot, but I would watch the special features on the DVD.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge Andrew Lloyd Webber fan. I'm literally recording this, and I have a poster for the Woman in White musical behind me. Phantom of the Opera is one of my favorite shows of all time. I've seen it on Broadway several times, in the West End. I love Phantom of the Opera, and it's interesting. I'd not watched this movie since high school. And that's
Seriously?
That's a good 8 years. Yeah. Once I saw the 25th anniversary filmed concert, I kind of never looked back. I was like, well, this is it then. I don't need anything else. This movie has a lot of good in it. And then there's also some other stuff. It's one of those films where, there's so much good that the things that aren't good frustrate me more than I think they normally would. Minnie Driver is so good in this, and she knows exactly what movie she's in. I have some issues with a lot of the rest of the cast. Patrick Wilson does his damn best, and I cannot believe they put that wig on him.
It's so bad.
It's so bad. That wig it's the same wig that they put on Ewan McGregor in Emma, pretty much. And it feels like a blatant, we're trying to make this man seem less attractive wig, which is weird to me. I love everyone in this movie having an English accent, except for Madame Giry having, the thickest, Fleur Delacour style French accent I've ever heard. That just gets me every time. I love... There's some bits in this that obviously are changed from the musical. There are some parts that are sung in the musical that are spoken in the film, which really annoys me. Notably, the beginning, I think it's Twisted Every Way, is entirely spoken, which annoys me. Also, there's some parts where in Think of Me, why is she suddenly, whenever she's performing, in a different opera than they were rehearsing? No one knows. There's also...
I 100% have that in my costumes, the costume section. I'm like, what were you doing?
Why is she wearing the Empress Sissy dress all of a sudden? Let me know. Also, I noticed this time, Amy Rossum, I'm going to say, for how young she was, does an incredible job. I think her singing's actually, for the most part, pretty strong. Her performance is good, except for the times where it's kind of not there. There's a handful of times where I'm like, did you know that they were filming? But her lip syncing on the cadenza in Think of Me is so hilariously bad. I was like, oh no. I was like, maybe this is like what Tom Hooper looked at and was like, we're going to do all of our singing live for Les Mis.
Oh God.
My favorite thing in it, honestly, is Maggie and I are both big fans of a certain West End and Broadway actor.
Certain beautiful man and kind soul.
Lovely man named Ramin.
Kareem
Ramin Karimloo actually has a cameo in this film. Like,
he's literally a cameo.
Literally a cameo? Yeah, I'm sorry. I was so proud of that pun. He is Gustave Daye in the photo, which I think is incredible because obviously a lot of people know him from having played the Phantom. I think he also played Raoul whenever he was younger, didn't he? Like he's kind of done it all. He also was, of course, in Love Never Dies, which, you know, there are so many parts of this movie that I'm like, we get it, Andrew. You're gonna make Love Never Dies. Like, music that's in this that then is in Love Never Dies, like bits that are done in it that I'm like, okay, we get it.
It brings me so much joy.
But you know, it's a funny movie in that like there's some really gorgeous imagery in this film, and then there are also some things that look like they're straight out of an 80s music video. Like I don't know why there's like so many shots where they just like tilt the camera for seemingly no reason. And I'm like, why do we keep doing that? Huh? What's that about? I'm so sorry, Maggie. I hate the staging of Past the Point of No Return. I hate it. I hate the dancers in the background. I hate the fact that the Phantom is in no way covered. Like, it makes the scene not entirely make sense. I don't like Christine's costume. It doesn't make sense within the context of the show that they're doing. And I'm like, Amy Rossum is so good in the rest of the movie, and she is giving so little in that scene. It made me so mad.
You have to take what little in return.
Yeah,
I'll see
so
myself
little I couldn't
out.
find it. Also, I mean, obviously, like, the biggest thing I will say if anyone brings up this movie is, like, where is the deformity? He has, like, a bad sunburn. Like, in a movie, I feel like you should be able to do something, like, really cool for a deformity. And it feels so lackluster. I'm like, it's one of those times where I'm like, we get it, Andrew. I understand. The Phantom is your stand-in character. But I honestly feel like I now need to go watch the 25th anniversary concert filmed thing to cleanse myself of this film. It's, you know, it's not the worst movie musical ever made, but I do think that it is pretty significantly not as good as the stage show.
Oh, I agree with you there. But I will say that I may or may not be able to act out this entire musical from start to finish. I know every piece of dialogue, every lyric, every cue. I know every move of Christine's hands. Like, I know this musical inside and out. And I haven't seen this since I was in college. The last time I watched it was probably 2012. So it's been almost 10 years. And which is shocking to think. And I still am very, very fond of it. And it all came back to me. Like, I remember this wasn't my official introduction to Phantom of the Opera because I had heard the Sarah Brightman, Michael Crawford soundtrack briefly. My mom likes Andrew Lloyd Webber. Like, I grew up watching Jesus Christ Superstar, and like she had the original like record, and we still have it somewhere. Jesus Christ Superstar.
Wait. I literally was listening to the original record earlier before we filmed it. It's still sitting on my record player next to me.
I love that so much. So like I grew up very aware of who Andrew Lloyd Webber was, and then when this was announced, my mom went to Borders, rest in peace, and got the soundtrack, because I don't know, I feel like things have changed slightly, and now you usually have to wait a little while for a soundtrack to come out for a movie, like after the movie's already out. But this soundtrack, we got it before the movie came out in theaters. And so we listened to it in the car, and like I listened to it on like my CD player, and I burned it onto my like computer back in the day, and then like turned it into an MP3 to listen on my like little MP3 Bean, I think was what it was called. So I listened to this like every day, and so I knew the whole movie before I even saw the movie, because the CD, I don't know if anyone listening remembers, the CD basically was the movie. Like it had all the dialogue and stuff in it too. It was like a very weird version of like doing a soundtrack for a movie ahead of a movie. But like I knew the whole thing going in, and then I like got to experience like seeing it all on, you know, the big screen. And that's all still with me, and that like all came rushing back today. And like, oh, Sunburn Phantom. I am an unrepentant fan of Jerry Butler as the Phantom. Like I started a GeoCities account literally dedicated to Gerard Butler when I was like 11. So
can you feel me shaking my head right now?
Yes. And so my first like AOL AIM username was like a variation of Angel of Music. I think it was My Angel of Music or something like that. I don't know. It's long out of like, I was really into Phantom of the Opera. Like, I read everything. I tried to learn French because of it. I read the Gaston Leroux book when I was a child. I wrote book reports on it. Like, I was a Phantom child. And, you know, now in, like, hindsight, I just want to thank Andrew Lloyd Webber for using this film to set up the greatest musical to ever exist, a.k.a. Love Never Dies. You can come fight me on Twitter. Like, you can't touch me. Love Should Die tried. And that site hasn't been updated in years. The only thing that like was like my biggest shock rewatching it was that I don't hate Raoul anymore. I really did not like Patrick Wilson when I was like a little snot-nosed 11-year-old.
Oh my God.
Because I am a Phantom Christine shipper. You can take that ship from my cold dead hands, and you can meet me on the end of a pier on Coney Island, and we can talk it out. But I will go down with that ship.
I feel like
I told you, I have come up with some like really saucy things to say today.
I feel like you being a Phantom girl and me being a Raoul girl is everything that like any listener would ever need to know about us.
Yeah, I feel like it's like very, very true to us.
I also feel like that's part of why we make a good podcast together. You know, the juxtaposition of it all.
It works so well. And I don't understand why I didn't like Patrick Wilson. Maybe it was the wig. But I really enjoy his performance. I mean, it's no Hadley Fraser or Simon Bailey. But he makes it work. Or Killian Donnelly. I mean, he makes it work. I know it's like also in the musical, but I still have such an issue with the scene before All I Ask of You, where Christine's like, I've been to his lair. And he's like, no, that was just a dream. And I'm like, do not gaslight her.
Okay, no,
Raoul.
the best thing is when she, you know, is like, hey, if you make me do this plan of yours, like, I know that it's going to go badly. I can't handle that. And he literally says, Christine, don't think that I don't care. But
and I'm like,
every hope and every prayer rests on you. And I'm like, okay, so what I heard, it feels like, you know, in the beginning of the Taylor Swift song, Betty.
Yes.
The narrator is like, I'm not going to make assumptions, but I think I'm the reason that you changed your homeroom. Like, it's the same energy.
And I feel like that was why I didn't like Raoul. Like, I feel like as an 11-year-old when, like, these opinions were formed, so, like, just remember, I have not changed since I was 11 years old. I feel like I found that really frustrating because, like, most of my friends when I was a child were guys, and guys are, and 11-year-olds are, like, notorious for being like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I think that, like, rubbed me the wrong way, and so I found Raoul really annoying. But, like, now as an adult...
not without his flaws. He just,
he's definitely flawed.
He has a couple of major good things about him. Like, he's really rich. He's you know, pretty kind. He also hasn't murdered anyone.
Exactly.
Those are my
Which
only,
is a downside.
My only standards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I look really fondly on this, and this is why I was so excited for this episode, because, like, I knew I have not changed my stance at all. I still love Past the Point of No Return, which was, like, my sexual awakening as a child, because I thought it was just, like, so hot to watch because I was so obsessed with Gerard Butler, and he looks so good in the Don Juan outfit. And I do have a theory about the face, because like I saw your notes when I was watching it today, and I was like, okay, but my theory as a child was that he had a prosthetic that he wore to make himself look less hideous.
No.
And so that's what you see, because when she pulls off because you see him putting his wig on. And so I've always theorized that he also has this like flap of fake skin that he uses. And so he had applied that first, and then the wig, and then the mask, because when she pulls the mask off, she takes the wig and the skin, and there's skin flapping.
I can't.
It's a whole thing. And I'm like, look how clever he is. He's wearing a like prosthetic face as well. I thought it was fascinating.
I like that to make it work for you, you have to come up with a theory.
It's there though.
Is it?
It is, because if you like slow it down, when she pulls the mask off, skin and hair goes with it. Because then he has this like weird unkempt hair and like the deformity that looks slightly different when they go downstairs into the lair. It like changes. He's got lumps in different places. But I will say my biggest issue with the movie, which I was obviously a child and didn't recognize, and now as an adult, I was like, oh, that's bad. The gypsies
it's so
are
bad.
horribly, the way that like every gypsy is like wagging their tongue creepily is very strange, and I don't like it, and I would like to have a conversation with whoever thought that was okay. And I'm very glad that that's not in the musical.
It's not good. It's not good at all. And I don't know what made them think that was chill. It's also like a bit of a weird backstory thing that they were like, what if we just like suddenly expanded on this here?
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much stuff that like in terms of like the Gaston Leroy book that like he was supposed to be Persian, and like there's a lot of stuff that is alluded to but never actually touched on, because I knew the Punjab lasso is talked about, which is derived from the Gaston Leroy book, and there's just a lot of stuff that like is actually problematic and has never actually been addressed. I don't feel like, I'm sure somebody's written something somewhere, but it is an issue. And I took great offense to it. But on a slightly happier note, I still love Learn to Be Lonely, which I think is such a beautiful song that Minnie Driver sings for the credits, and I don't feel like enough people talk about that, because it's a really honestly like the song.
Perfect credit song. And I know that I feel like they filmed a scene of it for the movie and then cut it.
You hear it twice. You hear the music for it.
I feel like I remember that at one point they were actually going to put it in properly as a song. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that they didn't, because I don't think it would work entirely within the context of the rest of the music, but I think it's such a perfect credits song.
And it's so beautiful, and the lyrics are so great.
Yeah, it's really lovely, actually.
And I noticed that I think it plays when she comes back in to give him the ring. Mm-hmm. Which that ring is so historically inaccurate. Anyways, my new hyperfixation for movies is rings, apparently. But I think it plays like very subtly in the background, and it made me wonder if there had been, like you were saying, like a moment where maybe she was going to sing like a part of it to him before she pieces off singing merrily with Raoul. Yeah. I was still like, y'all are mean. You just left the Phantom and you're just going to go off singing All I Ask of You really loudly. Come on.
Yeah.
I was like, y'all are mean.
The thing is that I feel like, obviously, in the wise words of Ramin Karimloo, murder is probably a no-no, but at the same time, they're all three doing some shady stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like that stagehand was creepy, or maybe that's just what I've decided. Do you know those headcanons you come up with as a child to justify things, and then it sticks?
Every day I find out that another Harry Potter one is not true.
It kills me. I'm like, I have had those headcanons since I was 10. Leave me alone. It's canon.
Oh Oh my god.
Because I definitely had a lot of theories about the Phantom of the Opera as a child, and I read a lot of fan fiction, and watched a lot of YouTube videos, and lurked on like AOL chat boards, and I definitely was pretending I was like 21 and I was like 11.
Oh my god.
Because that's what we did in the early 2000s. Like, don't do that now.
It's true.
Don't do that now today, kids. It's really bad. But the internet was a lawless place. It was a lawless place.
It was a different time.
There's so much stuff I look back on and I'm just like, huh, that was interesting.
Yeah, right.
Whoops. But yeah.
Well, one of the first things that I wanted to talk about actually is just to give a little bit of history of the book. And then I'm going to touch on both musical adaptations sort of briefly. So the novel The Phantom of the Opera was published in the early 20th century by the French writer Gaston Leroux. It was actually first serialized in a magazine called Le Gallois from September of 1909 to January of 1910. And it was published as a full novel in March of 1910. Supposedly it was inspired by true events, although that's still disputed. There's basically no proof other than the fact that Gaston Leroux, until he was on his deathbed, insisted that it was true. Leroux was a really big fan of Edgar Allan Poe and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and I think that you definitely can see that reflected in the novel. He, interestingly, was a reporter who covered like courtroom stuff, but also was an opera critic. So he'd actually spent quite a bit of time at the Palais Garnier.
I feel like we'd get along with him.
Honestly, probably. Like, the novel is set at the Palais Garnier. It's interesting, in the musical, they refer to it as the Opera Populaire, but it is meant to be the Paris Opera, which is at the Palais Garnier, which I'm going to talk about later. But there were rumors that it was haunted, and Leroux defended those like to the death. There is apparently a chapter from the serialized version called L'Enveloppe Magique that was not put into the novel and like basically hasn't been printed since, which I thought was fascinating. I would like to see it. There's a lot of differences between like the book and the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical that the movie is based on. Notably, like the nature of the deformity, like in the book, like he has no nose. It actually, the description that Bouquet gives in the musical whenever he's trying to like scare all the ballet girls sounds like it's lifted out of the book. The character of the Persian, which is like a whole character in the book, is not in most adaptations. There's also like the length of time that Eric, as he's called in the book, kidnaps Christine for. In the book, it's 2 weeks that he takes her and has her underground before he finally returns her. Also, like, before he lets her go in the inn, she actually does attempt suicide. And so, yeah, there's some big changes. I think the musical is a lot more romanticized than the book is, honestly. What's one really interesting thing, actually, if you look at like the book and the musical and then the movie, is that in both the book and the musical on stage, Christine and Raoul are both meant to be in like their early 20s. And the Phantom isn't kind of given an age. Actually, I didn't say it before, but maybe my biggest issue with the movie, other than the sunburn instead of a deformity, is the fact that the ages of the actors don't make sense. Like, the Phantom's age doesn't really matter, but M.A. Roslin was 18 when the movie came out. Presumably she was like 17 when they were filming. Patrick Wilson was 31. And yet somehow
He's how old now?
He was 31.
He's how old now?
Oh, I don't know how old he is now, but like...
No, I'm thinking about how much time has passed, and he was 31 then?
Yeah, but like, let's put this together. She's 18, he's 31. And you're telling me they were childhood sweethearts? When she was like 6, he would have been 19. They really did not think that one through at all.
They're 13 years difference. That's a choice.
And like, we know that her father died when she was 7. So that's the oldest she could have been the last time that she saw him. And he would have been 20. Yeah. So basically that makes the entire plot line there not make any sense. And also makes me
I guess
a little
they said
uncomfortable.
maybe they said if we put a wig on him, he looks younger.
It just makes me a little uncomfy too, thinking about underage Emmy Rossum. But you know, that's a thing.
Yikes.
Yeah, I feel like if this movie came out now and they did that, they'd be under some serious fire for it. 2004 was a different time, folks.
I keep telling people it was a lawless time.
It really was. So, speaking of lawless, there's another musical adaptation of there's a lot of adaptations of Phantom of the Opera, but there's another musical theater popular one, which is the musical adaptation called Phantom, which is by Mari Yeston and Arthur Coppett, that premiered in 1991. They actually were kind of starting to work on it before the Phantom of the Opera by Andrew Lloyd Webber came out, which is, unfortunate for them. It's actually never been to Broadway. I've never seen it.
I have.
What did you think of it?
I saw a semi-professional, so some of the people were equity.
Yeah, it makes a lot of choices.
Yeah, I will mention it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Just because I get to mention it too, but it's definitely a musical.
It has never made it to Broadway. It's been mostly overshadowed by Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera. I think, you could argue that it maybe wouldn't have done well even had Phantom of the Opera not come out. But it actually has been remarkably popular regionally and even has had international productions. Mm-hmm. It's very different.
It's because nobody can get Phantom of the Opera, and so it's the redheaded stepchild kind of version.
Yeah, and it's very different from the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. I understand why they went ahead and kept making it. It's very different from the book too, though. From what I have read and heard of it, Raoul just isn't a character. The Giris don't really feature in at all. It also is more of an operetta style, which Mari Yeston talked about the fact that he wanted it to reflect that it was set in the 1890s with the musical style, which, that's a choice. Let's just say there's a reason we're talking about a film adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera and not of Phantom.
Oh yeah.
But meanwhile, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Phantom of the Opera, which the film is an adaptation of, opened in the West End in 1986, and then on Broadway in 1988. It won the Best Musical, Olivier, and Tony Awards. It has music by Andrew Lloyd Webber, lyrics by Charles Hart, and a libretto by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Richard Stilgoe. It is still technically running in the West End and on Broadway. Obviously, theater is closed right now. I am pretty positive that post-coronavirus, you will be able to go and see it in the West End. Whether or not the Broadway production survives is a little bit more shaky and something that remains to be seen. It is one of the most seen, most financially successful musicals of all time, and as of right now, it is the longest running show on Broadway. The musical, honestly, it's kind of well known for the chandelier drop, I feel like. There are those musicals that have sort of the shtick that all the tourists talk about.
Like the barricade.
Exactly. Like the helicopter in Miss Saigon. And I feel like the chandelier is maybe the most famous one of those. One other interesting thing to note before Maggie's going to talk about other film adaptations is that I thought it was really interesting that in the musical, the main section of it, because obviously it's told in retrospect, but the main section of it is set in 1881, and for whatever reason in the film it is set in 1870.
I always wondered if that was because Andrew had a different plan for Love Never Dies.
I'm wondering if that was him trying to realize that his fan fiction of his fan fiction wasn't going to make sense with his original.
I have also always wondered why he chose to end on the tombstone when that doesn't match up with Love Never Dies.
I also think in the film, the opening scene, which I also another thing I really don't like in it is the fact that they keep going back to the black and white, like, I guess what is technically present day. I hate all of that. I would cut it all out if I could. But that is technically 1919, and I believe in the musical, it's meant to be like 1905. So we got a lot of questions about the timeline of this. I don't understand it, but choices were made.
So I have seen every single adaptation of Phantom of the Opera except for the lost 1916 Swedish adaptation, which is Das Gespenst im Opernhaus, or Das Phantom der Oper. Sorry if you speak Swedish and I slaughtered that. I did try. But anyways, when I was in college, I was what you call depressed. And I decided to watch all of the adaptations of The Phantom of the Opera because it sparked joy. And shockingly, like circa 2011, you could find every single version of The Phantom of the Opera for free on the internet. Also known as Tumblr, because people like to trade obscure things in the theater world. And I took full advantage of that. So I have seen all of them. I've even seen some of the ones that I could not understand a single thing that was happening, because there are some very wild adaptations in foreign languages that I don't speak, and there were not subtitles. So who knows? Shockingly, my favorite adaptation is actually the 1990 miniseries with Charles Dance as the Phantom. It is the Yeston Kopit Phantom musical, so it originally started out as this movie, and then it became the musical.
So actually, I read about this. The interesting thing is that, like, they originally started out talking about doing it as a musical. They had these ideas, and then they essentially, like, didn't get around to doing it, and so then they got Kopit got asked to do the series, and he was like, "Hey, is it fine if I just like do what we had planned to do?" And they Yeston was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." That. And then later they went and made the musical. So it's like, it's a very weird
The way they went about it is bizarre. But that story is so interesting. And so the Phantom is called Eric in that. And he is a disfigured musician who like lives in the basement of the Opera Garnier. And so Christine comes to the opera house, and the manager, in this version, the manager is married to Carlotta. And so Carlotta is supposed to be giving Christine vocal training. And she is a bitch. And basically tells her she's only fit to work in the costuming department, which, ouch, I feel that. And so then somebody tells Christine that she can stay in the storage room at the opera house. And she is a very gifted singer, so she like sings in her room, and through the vents, the Phantom hears her. So Eric hears her and then like comes and offers to teach her music. And he falls in love with her. And also, so in this version, Raoul does exist, but his name is just like the Comte de Chauny. Like he's never, as far as I remember, his name is never actually mentioned. And he is her childhood sweetheart. And needless to say, Eric does not like seeing them together. It's like a through line. Not a fan. But there's so many things. And so like, instead of sabotaging Carlotta's voice, he like throws rats on her. And I don't know, it's insane. And I really enjoyed it because I felt like the weird relationship or obsession with, Eric and Christine felt much more like drawn out, obviously, because it was a series and not just like a movie. And it felt much more like the characters like grew and like explored their experience. And then it's not like that in the musical at all. And the musical just makes me like want to smash my face into a brick. It's not great. Somebody can dump rats on me. But it's actually really good. So if like you ever get the opportunity to watch it, I do like strongly suggest it. I believe that ABC and Disney bought it like a few years ago. So like they own it. So maybe it'll be on Disney Plus one day. Fingers crossed. I would actually be like really into that because I would love to rewatch this. But it's fun, and that is my personal favorite. But like I said, I have seen all of them. Some of the most popular ones, other than that Phantom of the Opera, is the 1925 Phantom of the Opera, which is probably the most iconic film version of Phantom.
Definitely.
That would be the Lon Chaney, Norman Carey, and Mary Philbin version.
I actually love that movie.
I do too. It is like so great. And I have a picture at the Universal in Florida they have that statue room.
Yep.
And I have a picture with the statue of that Phantom. I love that one. It's still definitely like a comfort film if it's on like TMC or something. And then there's another older one from 1943, also called Phantom of the Opera. This one does not have a the Phantom, so it's just Phantom of the Opera. And it starred Claude Rains as the Phantom and Susanna Foster as Christine. That's another very popular adaptation. And then in 1989, there's a very interesting Phantom of the Opera, which was directed by Dwight H. Little, and it featured Robert Englund as the Phantom and Jill Sholin as Christine. And this is the Faustian horror film, like lots of devil imagery. The Phantom, it's a straight horror film. The Phantom does not wear a mask in this one. He actually sews skin onto his face to like hide his deformity.
Oh.
Like you see him like sew it onto his face. I mean, it's Robert Englund, so you get what you expect. And I love Robert Englund films. I was actually in a TV show last year with Robert Englund, which is wild. He was like the narrator of it. It was cool. So like love Robert Englund, but this is such a fruity version of Phantom. I don't recommend it. But if you are like me and you just want to say that you've watched all of the Phantom of the Opera adaptations, go for it. And then if you're a millennial and you didn't watch this Disney Channel original movie, you are lying. In 2000, Disney had Phantom of the Megaplex. Yes, you heard that right. Disney adapted the classic Phantom of the Opera story and set it in a megaplex, which was haunted.
I actually have never seen it.
Nicole!
But to be fair, in 2001, I was in kindergarten. Or in 2000, I mean, I was in kindergarten. So that's probably why.
What kind of excuse is that?
I didn't really watch Disney Channel until my sister was watching it.
Oh my god. You missed out on so many good Disney Channel original movies, Nicole.
I'm sure I did.
Did you at least see Cadet Kelly?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Luck of the Irish?
I did watch Lizzie McGuire, so then I, of course, saw Cadet Kelly. But I actually haven't seen Luck of the Irish.
Oh, it's really good. I still remember when it came out for my birthday.
Do we think Phantom of the Megaplex is on Disney Plus?
Oh my god. I'm going to look it up right now and give the answer to our lovely listeners. Phantom of the Megaplex. Disney Plus. Oh my god. Oh my god. It is on there. 17-year-old Peter Riley and the rest of the theater are working to prepare for a star-studded premiere when a string of peculiar occurrences awaken the myth of the Phantom of the Megaplex. Yep, we can all watch that. But then we were supposed to get another adaptation of the Phantom of the Opera, but unfortunately it was one of Universal's ill-fated Dark Universe films, and it's been a few years since they announced it, and I'm not seeing it happening anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I don't think we're
I don't think we're getting that.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, we are definitely due for a revival of the Gaston Leroux story. I would be
love
really
to see
interested to see.
Do you have like any directors that you would particularly like to see do it?
Okay, so I had a weird one come to me, and I don't think it's her style, but I would love to see Sofia Coppola.
Oh, okay, because I also would love to see a Phantom of the Opera movie that is more centered around Christine, and nobody does movies about like young girls like Sofia Coppola does.
Exactly. Something about one of the dresses that Carlotta had on made me think of Marie Antoinette. And I was like, oh, a coming of age film about a young woman.
Yeah.
She would really nail like the Christine Daae story.
See,
and probably dive into her losing her father, her childhood with Raoul, and like seeing her grow up, and then this mysterious phantom. Be really good.
See, I really thought that you were going to say Del Toro.
Oh, I mean, yeah. But I don't know if I want another horror film.
That's fair. That's fair.
I did not like that version at all.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I had liked it, I can't even think of like one good thing about it except Robert Englund.
I do feel like I could see a version of this done in a similar
picture Tom Hiddleston as Raoul.
See, okay, you are precisely picking up what I'm putting down. Like I was going to say, in a similar style to, what is the name?
Crimson Peak.
Crimson Peak. I literally could only get the word crimson, and I was like, crimson what? Like, my brain was like, crimson Tom Hiddleston. But I could see it done in a similar style to that, where it's like kind of horror-y, but more just like heavy gothic. Yeah, I do
I'd
think
be really into that.
We're in particular do a new like adaptation of the novel.
Yeah, straight adaptation of the novel. I don't want. I love Andrew Lloyd Webber, but I don't want another movie version of his musical. I love him, like genuinely.
I think that Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals do not suit themselves well to movie adaptations.
However, if he wanted to give me a Love Never Dies movie, I would actually donate money to it, even though he does not need my money. But I would
be willing to
give
donate
it.
Money.
I would give my blood, sweat, and tears to see that.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, start the Kickstarter.
Be like, hi, sir. How do you feel about me starting a Kickstarter for you to make a movie of Love Never Dies? Because let me tell you, Ramin and Sierra and Hadley are not getting any younger. And I need this.
Oh my. I honestly, your enduring love for that musical is one of the most endearing things about you.
Thank you. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. And I'm not kidding. I will fight people on it. I have fought people on it since 2011. I will keep fighting. Oh no, that's been 10 years. Oh no.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to our next topic.
Talk about that while I have an existential crisis.
Yeah, I'm going to let you have your existential crisis now while I chat. So as I said, in the film, they refer to the Opera Populaire, but the Palais Garnier has been home to the Paris Opera since the 1870s. It is a 1,970-seat opera house in the 9th arrondissement of Paris. It was built from 1861 to 1875. It took a long time to finish. It was commissioned by Emperor Napoleon III. And designed by architect Charles Garnier. It was actually not originally called the Palais Garnier, but eventually it started getting called that after the architect. And also because it's quite lavish and it sort of fit. Now there is actually a large body of water underneath it. Whenever they were first building it, there's like a part of the Seine that kept, I guess, like springing up. And they tried to get rid of it and it kept coming back. So they decided to just work around it. And there just is a lake down there. Unfortunately, it doesn't house a Phantom's Lair. And it is actually used for Parisian firefighters to do underwater rescue training, which is pretty cool. Now, it is true from what I could find that in May 1896, there was a fire on the roof of the opera house. It was right as the opera Hell's first act was finishing. And it melted through, like, I didn't really understand all the technical parts of this, but it essentially melted through a wire that was holding something that was holding up the chandelier. And the chandelier did, in fact, crash. It injured several people, and it killed one woman, a concierge named Madame Chaumet, or Madame Chaumette. Which, so, you know, that part is true. But they did have electric lighting installed in 1881, which I thought was kind of interesting. One thing I did research because I wanted to know, because in the film you see like a bunch of actual animals. Like you see them use sheep on stage. There's a pony at one point. I also could talk for days about how ludicrous it is that the Phantom supposedly has a horse. But I couldn't find anything to indicate that they ever used real animals on stage at the Palais Garnier. maybe they did, but I couldn't find any proof. The Palais Garnier did house the Paris Opera Ballet School for some years, which trained young dancers for free. The ballet school was actually founded in 1780, and the idea was that to be in the Paris Opera Ballet, you essentially had to go through the ballet school. It honestly, from what I can tell, kind of still works that way today. I couldn't figure out if they actually would have lived as at the Palais Garnier, as is kind of implied in the film. I do know that the ballet school is today a boarding school, but it also said it like became a boarding school in like 1970 or something. So I don't know if it would have been back then or not. Now, Leroux's descriptions of the opera house in his novel are very exact and very true to the Palais Garnier, partially because, you know, he was an opera critic. He probably spent a lot of time there. There is a box 5. It does have a marker on it talking about the Phantom of the Opera. Today, the Palais Garnier is actually mostly used for ballet, because the Paris Opera Company is still like affiliated with it. But in 1989, the Opéra Bastille opened, and that's where they do most of their productions now. It is open for tours during the day. A few years ago, I went to Paris with my friend Patricia, and we went and toured the Palais Garnier. I will put some of my photos up on Instagram from that whenever this episode goes up. If anyone wants to see them, I do have a photo outside of box 5, because of course I do. It's a really beautiful building, but it's also opulent to the point of being gaudy. It gets comparisons drawn to the Palace of Versailles a lot because it is that same sort of ornate building, and it does have a magnificent grand staircase, as you kind of see represented in the masquerade scene, which is really beautiful and really stunning. And it also does kind of give you this idea of the fact that at the time, opera really was something that people went to not to watch opera per se, but to see other people and to be seen. So it's a really astounding building, and it's very interesting to me the way that even today it sort of embraces the fact that Phantom of the Opera is part of its legacy.
So I'm still having my existential crisis, realizing that 10 long years ago, Love Never Dies came into my life, and I've never quite been the same. But I digress. The costume design for the Phantom of the Opera was done by Alexandra Byrne, who you might recognize from her work on Mary Queen of Scots and Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor.
And our first episode that we did on Emma.
Yes. I was going to make a Matt Damon joke about the fact that sadly she did not work on the Thor movie that Matt Damon was in.
Bless her. She's blocking your jokes.
She was spared. She was spared. I will be upfront when I say that the Phantom of the Opera costumes leave something to be desired. They leave a lot to be desired. There's certainly no stage Phantom of the Opera costumes, and I will always prefer the wishing gown and the Amnita dress from the stage productions. But these costumes work more or less to achieve what they were attempting with the 2004 film. They're not terrible. They're certainly not 100% accurate for the time period. A lot of skin is shown. I did find the transition from ballet dancer to Think of Me to work quite well when I was a child. But that dress does not match Hannibal at all.
Nope.
It's not what Carlotta was wearing. And this works in the musical on stage because she wears what Carlotta had on, essentially.
It also is such a weirdly, like, precise reference to the Empress Sissy. Like, there's that famous painting, like, the jewelry, the dress, all of it, that I literally cannot figure out why they chose to do that.
It's not even remotely the same. And Christine wears a tremendous amount of white in this film. Like, every other dress is white. And I feel like it was they're probably pushing that kind of like pure virginal aesthetic. Because if you think about the stage costumes, she wears all sorts of different colors. I mean, she's got her blue wishing dress, and she's got
the pink
dress.
Yeah.
There's a lot of color. And so I thought it was a very intentional choice that was being made with what they were trying to convey. And it didn't work for me. As an adult watching it, it doesn't work for me. I think I kind of more or less understand what they were going for. And I guess they achieved it for 2004 standards, but I'm not a fan of it. Honestly, Carlotta had the best costumes. And Minnie worked them so well.
Oh, she was
so good. I was a huge fan. Now, I will say, I do prefer this Red Death costume for the Phantom over the stage costume. I don't like the stage costume.
Okay.
I know, a very hot take, because I know people really like that. And I can't really even give like a concrete reason for why I dislike it, except for the fact that Gerard Butler looks really good in it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, it's a good look.
Of all the costumes to keep, though, from the stage show, Ral's masquerade costume, did that have to be one of them?
Did it have to be? Why? I saw on Twitter when I was posting about watching it today that people do not like the masquerade costumes, and I actually really like them. I also like the choreography from Masquerade.
I don't like the choreography. I like the costumes fine, other than I really don't like Christine's. It feels like very much a nothing costume.
Let me just tell you what, I had a dress very similar to that we got at a Goodwill when I was a child. It's not spectacular.
Yeah.
But I liked the way that they styled the masquerade scene with the costumes and the dancing, because it felt like it was separate from what was going on with Ral and Christine and with Andre and Fairman and all of that. And it felt like a nice distinct line between them, which I feel like sometimes the staged one, at least looking at pictures, it can feel very cluttered. But I do like Christine's masquerade dress on stage significantly more. That pink dress is just gorgeous. And this one is so bleh. So, I mean, I think it works aesthetically. It's not like garish. I didn't hate anything. I know you really just like Past the Point of No Return. It's not a great dress, and it's slipping down the entire time.
Yep. Honestly, it's his costume that bothers me more than hers, though, just in that, like, contextually.
He was trying to look hot.
Okay, yeah, but contextually it doesn't make sense.
No. And that's the thing that I think this musical does not do well on screen, is trying to convey the musical within a musical. They do it very poorly, and I think it's because and this is probably a director issue, he was too focused on the big story and not focused on the smaller stories. And so he probably was like, yeah, but I want her in this dress, disregarding the fact that it's set within a musical and we just saw the dress that she should have had on.
Right.
And so I think that was a Joel Schumacher problem and not a costumer problem. Because watching that and thinking that through, I'm like, oh, that seems like a man being like, oh, it doesn't matter.
I also think, like,
care.
Alexandra Byrne is such a talented costume designer and especially I think,
she's
this
so
is, like,
good.
Early in her career. Like, I can't really hold it against her, because I do think that, like, for what they're going for, they are good costumes. I just don't think they fit the story well.
I agree wholeheartedly. So they're not the worst costumes in the world, but it was 2004. It was a different time.
It wasn't it, though. I was in 4th grade.
God, we were children, Nicole. Children.
Literal children. So was Amy Rossum.
I was 11.
Oh, man.
And taking piano at the time.
As was I.
And
as was I.
And I was learning all of this music on the piano.
I love that.
My fingers still twitched when the main theme started. My fingers still twitched. It's like the weirdest muscle memory of like remembering where fingers should be. It's so surreal.
That overture started, and I'm not gonna lie, like, for all that I've ragged on this movie, and I did kind of have to play bad cop to Maggie's love of it.
Oh yeah.
that
love never
overture
dies.
started, and I literally hopped up and like did a weird dance around my apartment. I have been listening to the Phantom of the Opera 25th anniversary album all day today. As many issues as I have with this movie, I do love this musical, and I am very grateful for how many people, myself included, this movie introduced to the musical.
Because it truly did introduce people to the Phantom of the Opera and probably helped it become one of the longest running shows.
Absolutely. I think, if you think about the fact that it had opened on Broadway in 1988, I'm sure by 2004, it kind of needed just a little bit of a boost. That also probably
this made it more international.
Yeah, and I think it also helped it, live through the Lion King and Wicked and things like that becoming popular. Yeah. All right. Anything else that you wanted to say before I wrap us up?
I'm just thinking about Gerard Butler.
And I'm thinking about Ramin.
I mean, when am I not thinking about Ramin? I'm trying to get over the fact that it's been February 22nd, Love Never Dies, premiered February 22nd, 2010. It is going to be 10 years old next month. 10 long years. Living a mere facade. Oh my gosh.
Oh man. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to our 18th episode of Petticoats and Poppies, History Girls at the Movies.
We'd love to hear from you on social media and to hear what you think of Phantom of the Opera.
You can find us on social media at HGATM Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also find Maggie at Maggie of the Town. You can find me at Nicole Ackman 16.
You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and over on the Earglue Media website. You can also find us on Audible. If you like what you hear, don't forget to leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts and over on Podchaser. Every few episodes, we will be reading your reviews, so be sure to leave us one if you would like to be featured.
We'll be back soon with another episode as we continue to look at period films from a history and film perspective. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and wear a mask.
You've been listening to Petticoats and Poppies.
History Girls at the Movies.
Get my doggy. Bring my doggy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.